For most of our species' existence, pain was brief and useful. It appeared when bone broke, skin tore, or muscle strained, and it faded as healing came. Those who felt pain survived long enough to pass on their genes. Yet today, in a world safer than any our ancestors knew, millions live with pain that no longer protects and no longer leaves. The body that once used pain as a sharp signal now produces a slow, persistent echo. What changed between the world we evolved in and the one we inhabit now? For most of human history, pain was not an enemy, it was a signal. When early humans walked barefoot across uneven ground and stepped on something sharp, pain forced them to stop. When a muscle tore while lifting a heavy stone, pain limited movement so the tissue could heal. In a world filled with cold nights, rough terrain, wild animals, and physical danger, pain was a short message from the body that said, "Something is wrong. Protect yourself." It did not exist to punish, it existed to preserve life. The human nervous system evolved in that environment, shaped slowly over hundreds of thousands of years, beginning with our early ancestors in Africa, who survived only if they responded quickly to injury. Pain was sharp, clear, and often temporary. When healing occurred, the signal usually faded. This is important because the original design of pain was closely tied to visible damage and immediate threat. In small hunter-gatherer groups, daily life demanded constant movement, walking long distances, carrying water, climbing, crouching, building shelters. The body was in motion most of the day. Muscles supported joints. Joints were used in varied ways. Rest followed exertion in natural cycles. Within that pattern, pain played a simple role. It warned, it limited, and then it stepped back. The modern world is very different from the environment that shaped this system. Many people now experience pain that lingers long after tissue has healed. Lower backs ache for years. Necks remain tight without clear injury. Knees hurt without a recent fall. This difference between short protective pain and long persistent pain is central to understanding the problem. Acute pain is closely connected to injury. Chronic pain, by medical definition, continues for months or longer, often beyond the expected time of healing. This does not mean the pain is imagined. It means the system that once reacted to clear danger is now operating in a more complex environment. To understand why this happens, we must return to the beginning of our species. Early Homo sapiens did not sit for long periods in rigid chairs. They did not sleep on soft mattresses that removed all pressure from certain muscles. They did not repeat the same small hand movement thousands of times each day. Their bodies were adapted to constant variation. Movement was survival. Stillness was usually brief. The human spine, joints, and nervous system evolved under these conditions. Pain, therefore, evolved as part of a moving body, not a stationary one. Evidence from studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer populations, such as the Hadza in Tanzania, shows patterns of frequent walking, squatting, and shifting postures throughout the day. These populations are not identical to our ancestors, but they offer a window into how human bodies function in environments closer to those in which we evolved. In such settings, discomfort appears linked to activity and recovery cycles, rather than endless repetition or prolonged immobility. The nervous system expects change. When the environment changes too quickly, biology cannot fully keep pace. Modern humans now live longer than most of their ancestors. We inhabit climate-controlled spaces. We use tools that reduce large muscle effort, but increase small repetitive strain. The original alarm system of pain remains the same, yet the context around it has transformed. The body still sends signals, but the meaning of those signals becomes harder to interpret. Pain that once pointed clearly to a wound now sometimes reflects imbalance, deconditioning, or heightened sensitivity within the nervous system itself. In the world where humans began, pain had a narrow job description. In the world we live in now, that job has expanded beyond what evolution prepared it for. Understanding this difference is the first quiet step toward understanding why so many people today live with pain that does not simply fade away. If pain was designed as a short and useful signal, then it is important to understand how that signal travels. Inside the body, specialized nerve endings respond to heat, pressure, chemical changes, and tissue damage. These receptors send electrical messages through the spinal cord to the brain. The brain does not simply receive pain, it interprets it. In early human environments, this interpretation was usually straightforward. A sharp object cut the skin, a fall bruised the bone, fire burned the hand. The brain connected sensation with visible cause. The system worked because danger was immediate and physical. The nervous system that evolved in that world favored sensitivity over indifference. Missing a painful warning could mean death. Feeling pain too early was safer than feeling it too late. This is known in evolutionary biology as a protective bias. It is better to mistake a harmless rustle for a predator than to ignore a real threat. Over many generations, humans inherited a pain system tuned toward caution. In a landscape where injuries could easily become fatal without modern medicine, that sensitivity improved survival. However, this same protective bias can create difficulty in a modern context. The nervous system does not know about office chairs, computer keyboards, or long commutes. It only knows signals. When muscles remain tense for hours, when joints stay in one position without variation, small stress signals begin to accumulate. The brain may interpret these signals as warning signs even if there is no major injury. Unlike the sharp cut of a stone tool, modern strain is often slow and repetitive. It builds quietly. From the perspective of our evolutionary past, such continuous low-level strain was less common. Hunter-gatherers alternated between walking, squatting, lifting, resting, and sleeping on firm ground. The variability itself helped distribute load across different tissues. In contrast, modern daily life often reduces variability. A person may sit for long stretches, then drive, then sit again. The body remains in similar shapes for much of the day. When the same tissues are loaded in the same way repeatedly, minor irritation can persist. The nervous system, already biased toward protection, may amplify the message. This does not mean the pain is exaggerated by choice. It means the system is doing what it evolved to do: err on the side of caution. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans experienced fractures, arthritis, and trauma. Skeletal remains from prehistoric sites reveal healed bones and signs of joint wear. Yet the pattern of injury was often linked to acute events or lifelong heavy use in varied movement patterns. These populations also had shorter average lifespans, meaning fewer individuals lived long enough to accumulate decades of repetitive strain in relatively static environments. Today, many people live into their 70s and beyond. The same joints that once served a hunter for perhaps 30 or 40 years must now function for twice that time. The pain system has not fundamentally changed during this short span of cultural evolution. It remains wired for immediate survival, not for managing decades of subtle mechanical stress combined with psychological tension. The brain plays a central role in deciding whether a sensation becomes pain. It weighs input from the body alongside memory, emotion, and context. In ancestral settings, context was often clear: visible injury, harsh weather, predator threat. In modern life, context is more complex. Work pressure, social isolation, lack of sleep, and reduced movement can all influence how signals are interpreted. The same neural pathways that once protected our ancestors in open landscapes now operate within enclosed rooms and digital routines. Pain was never meant to be a long-term background noise. It was meant to interrupt, to demand attention briefly, and then to recede. When it lingers, it suggests not that the body has failed, but that the environment surrounding the body has shifted far from the conditions under which this system first evolved. If pain was shaped in a world of immediate danger and constant movement, then we must consider what happens when that world disappears. For most of our evolutionary history, the human body existed in open landscapes. Early Homo sapiens moved across savannas, riverbanks, forests, and dry plains. The ground was uneven. The temperature shifted between day and night. The body adjusted continuously. Muscles lengthened and shortened. Joints rotated in wide ranges. Even rest was active in its own way, often spent squatting, kneeling, or lying on firm surfaces that required subtle muscular engagement. In that setting, the body was rarely still for long. This matters because biological systems adapt to patterns. The musculoskeletal system strengthens along lines of use. Bones remodel in response to load. Muscles maintain tone when regularly challenged. When those challenges are removed or reduced, adaptation shifts in the opposite direction. Modern environments, especially in industrialized societies, have dramatically altered daily movement patterns in just a few generations. Climate-controlled buildings reduce thermal stress. Paved roads remove uneven terrain. Furniture supports the body in ways that decrease muscular effort. Tools and machines reduce large-scale physical labor, but often increase small repetitive actions. From an evolutionary perspective, this transition is extremely recent. The human genome has not had time to redesign the pain system for a life that includes long hours of seated work and limited variation in posture. Evidence from anthropology and biomechanics suggests that variability of movement plays a protective role. Studies of traditional populations who maintain high levels of daily physical activity show differences in posture and joint use compared to sedentary populations. While these groups are not free from pain, the pattern of strain often differs. Movement is distributed across many tissues rather than concentrated in a few. The spine flexes and extends. The hips squat deeply. The ankles remain mobile. In contrast, modern life often narrows the range of motion. The body spends extended periods in similar shapes, particularly seated with hips flexed and spine rounded or rigidly upright. Over years, this limited pattern can influence muscle strength, joint stability, and tissue resilience. The pain system responds not only to injury but also to sustained stress signals from tissues under repetitive load. When small signals continue without full recovery, the nervous system may interpret them as ongoing threat. There is also a temporal difference between ancestral and modern life. In small hunter-gatherer groups, daily survival tasks were intense but cyclical. Periods of exertion were followed by rest dictated by daylight, weather, and resource availability. Today, many people experience prolonged low-level stress without clear physical resolution. Work may continue indoors long after sunset. Artificial light extends activity into the night. Sleep patterns may shorten or fragment. Research in neuroscience shows that sleep and stress influence pain perception. Poor sleep can increase sensitivity to pain. Chronic stress can alter how the brain processes sensory input. These factors were present in ancient life, but often in acute bursts, rather than as continuous background conditions lasting years. Another important shift involves lifespan and population structure. In prehistoric societies, fewer individuals reached advanced age. Modern medicine, sanitation, and nutrition have extended average lifespan significantly. Joints, discs, and connective tissues now function for many decades beyond what was common for much of human history. Degenerative changes in cartilage and bone accumulate gradually. The pain system, originally calibrated for shorter lifespans and more variable movement, now monitors tissues exposed to repetitive stress for much longer durations. The result is not necessarily catastrophic injury, but persistent discomfort that lingers. Chronic pain, then, can be seen as a signal arising from a mismatch between ancient biology and modern structure. The body still operates according to principles shaped in open, physically demanding landscapes, yet it now inhabits controlled spaces, prolonged stillness, and extended lifespans. The alarm system has not changed its core function. What has changed is the environment in which it operates. The world in which the human body was shaped was not gentle, but it was consistent in one important way. Movement was unavoidable. Early humans did not exercise in the modern sense. They did not separate physical activity from daily life. Walking long distances to gather food, tracking animals across uneven ground, carrying water, digging for roots, building temporary shelters, these were not optional tasks. They were woven into survival itself. The body evolved inside this pattern of continuous, varied motion. Muscles strengthened through use. Joints were taken through wide ranges of motion every day. The spine bent, twisted, and extended in response to terrain and task. There was no single posture that dominated the day. This matters because the musculoskeletal system depends on load and variation to maintain balance. Bone tissue remodels in response to mechanical stress. Muscles adapt to the demands placed upon them. Connective tissues, such as tendons and ligaments, adjust gradually to repeated strain. In the ancestral environment, strain was real but distributed. A hunter might run in short bursts, crouch for long periods, climb, then rest. A gatherer might squat, reach overhead, lift, then walk. Each movement pattern engaged different muscle groups and joint angles. Over time, this variety acted as a natural conditioning system. The body was not symmetrical in strength, but it was dynamic. The modern world has changed this dynamic in subtle but profound ways. Many daily tasks now require limited movement. Walking has been replaced by driving. Lifting has been replaced by machinery. Communication that once required travel now occurs through screens. Even children, who once spent much of the day climbing, running, and exploring uneven ground, often spend extended hours seated indoors. The reduction of varied movement does not immediately cause injury. Instead, it gradually alters muscle tone, joint stability, and posture. When certain muscles are underused, they weaken. When others remain in shortened positions for long periods, they may tighten. The result is not a dramatic event, but a slow shift in mechanical balance. Research in biomechanics shows that prolonged sitting affects the hips and lower back in particular. The hip flexor muscles remain shortened, while the gluteal muscles may become less active. Over months and years, this imbalance can influence how force travels through the spine. The pain that arises is often not linked to a single injury, but to accumulated mechanical stress. From an evolutionary perspective, such prolonged stillness is unusual. Anthropological observations of traditional populations indicate that even during rest, postures differ from modern chairs. Squatting, kneeling, or sitting on the ground engages stabilizing muscles differently. The body remains subtly active. This constant low-level engagement helps maintain joint range and muscle coordination. In contrast, modern seating often supports the body in ways that reduce muscular demand almost entirely. Support is not harmful in itself, but when it becomes the dominant daily pattern, the body adapts accordingly. Another important factor is terrain. Uneven ground challenges balance and engages small, stabilizing muscles in the feet and ankles. Paved flat surfaces reduce this variability. Over time, reduced foot and ankle strength can influence knee and hip mechanics. The body functions as a connected chain. Small changes in one area can alter load distribution elsewhere. The world of our ancestors required constant micro-adjustment. The modern world often minimizes it. Chronic pain does not emerge solely because life has become easier. It emerges because the pattern of demand has narrowed. The body was shaped for movement that was complex and unpredictable. When daily life becomes predictable in posture and motion, certain tissues bear repeated stress while others remain underused. The pain system, designed to monitor tissue stress and prevent damage, continues to operate. It responds to imbalance even when no dramatic injury has occurred. Movement in the ancestral world was not only frequent, it was varied in rhythm and intensity. A day could include slow walking at sunrise, sudden bursts of running during a hunt, long periods of squatting while preparing food, then complete rest after sunset. This variation allowed tissues to experience both load and recovery. Muscles were challenged, then given time to repair. Joints were compressed, then unloaded. The nervous system registered effort, then quiet. In this pattern, strain did not accumulate in one narrow channel. It moved across the body like weather across a landscape. Modern daily life often follows a different rhythm. Effort may be low but prolonged. Sitting at a desk for hours places continuous pressure on certain structures of the lower back. Typing or using a mouse repeats small movements thousands of times. Driving fixes the hips and knees in limited angles. Even leisure activities such as watching television or using a phone involve similar static positions. The intensity is mild, yet the duration is long. Over time, this difference between short, intense variation and long, low-level repetition becomes meaningful. Biological tissues respond not only to how much force they endure, but also to how often and how consistently that force is applied. When a tissue is exposed to moderate stress without adequate variation, microscopic strain can persist. In ancestral environments, the unpredictability of movement distributed stress more evenly. The body rarely performed the same small action in identical form for years. Today, many occupations demand precisely that. Assembly work, keyboard use, even certain forms of manual labor involve repeating identical patterns day after day. The human body did not evolve under such narrow mechanical routines. Anthropological evidence from skeletal remains shows where patterns in early populations, yet these patterns often reflect heavy but diverse use. Joints display signs of activity related to walking long distances or carrying loads, but not necessarily the highly localized repetitive strain common in some modern tasks. Moreover, when injury occurred in prehistoric settings, it often led to reduced activity until healing progressed. Social cooperation in small groups allowed injured individuals to receive support. In modern society, economic and social structures sometimes encourage continued work despite discomfort, which can prolong mechanical stress. There is also a difference in how children grow within these environments. In traditional societies with high physical activity, children develop strength and coordination through play and daily tasks that involve climbing, balancing, and carrying. These early years shape musculoskeletal development. In many modern settings, childhood includes less unstructured outdoor movement and more seated learning. This shift influences how bones and muscles adapt during critical growth periods. The foundation of adult posture and strength is partly laid during youth. When variability of movement is reduced early, certain stabilizing muscles may not develop fully. The pain that appears decades later may have roots in these early adaptations. The nervous system remains closely connected to mechanical experience. When certain patterns repeat without change, the brain may interpret persistent signals from overused tissues as warning signs. The original evolutionary purpose of pain to prevent further damage remains active, yet the environment no longer provides the same alternating cycles of stress and recovery. Instead, it often provides steady, narrow demand. Chronic pain, viewed through this lens, reflects not weakness of the body, but persistence of an ancient protective system responding to modern patterns of use. Another quiet difference between the ancestral world and the modern one lies not only in how often humans moved, but in how they rested. Rest in early human environments did not usually mean complete muscular disengagement. People often sat on the ground, squatted, or lay on firm surfaces that required subtle adjustments of posture. These positions engage stabilizing muscles in the hips, abdomen, and back at low levels. The body was supported, but not fully held in place by external structures. Even sleep likely occurred on natural materials such as woven plants, animal skins, or packed earth. These surfaces were softer than stone yet firmer than many modern mattresses. They did not remove all mechanical input from the body. In contrast, modern rest often involves chairs and beds designed to minimize effort. A padded seat supports the spine and hips in fixed angles. A reclining couch reduces the need for core engagement. A thick mattress distributes pressure widely and allows the body to sink into a single position for long periods. Comfort is not harmful in itself. It reduces acute stress and allows recovery. Yet when high levels of support become the dominant environment for many hours each day, muscles that evolved to maintain posture through subtle, continuous activity may gradually lose strength. Research in physiology shows that muscle tissue adapts to the demands placed upon it. Reduced activation leads to decreased muscle mass and endurance over time. This process does not require dramatic inactivity. Even modest reductions in daily movement can influence muscle conditioning across months and years. The muscles that stabilize the spine and pelvis are especially important in this regard. When these muscles weaken, load shifts toward passive structures such as ligaments and intervertebral discs. These tissues are not designed to bear sustained load without muscular support. The pain that develops may not stem from sudden injury, but from altered load distribution. From an evolutionary perspective, the body expected a certain baseline of muscular engagement simply to maintain posture in a world without furniture. Anthropological observations of populations that spend more time on the ground show differences in hip mobility and lower limb strength compared to populations accustomed to chairs from early childhood. These differences illustrate how environment shapes anatomy across the lifespan. Another aspect of rest involves circadian rhythm. In ancestral settings, activity was strongly influenced by daylight. Darkness encouraged sleep, while daylight encouraged movement. Artificial lighting now extends wakefulness well beyond sunset. Reduced sleep duration and irregular schedules are common in many societies. Scientific research consistently links insufficient sleep with increased sensitivity to pain. The nervous system becomes more reactive when restorative sleep is limited. In this way, modern patterns of rest influence both muscular conditioning and neural processing. The environment in which the pain system evolved included cycles of exertion and deep recovery, shaped by natural light and physical fatigue. Today, rest may be prolonged in posture yet fragmented in quality. Muscles may be inactive for hours, while the nervous system remains alert due to cognitive demands and artificial light. This mismatch alters how tissues recover and how signals are interpreted. Chronic pain can emerge not only from how we move, but from how we stop moving. The body evolved to alternate between meaningful effort and restorative sleep, aligned with natural rhythms. When both movement and rest follow patterns unfamiliar to our evolutionary history, the ancient protective system of pain continues to respond, even if the environment no longer resembles the one that shaped it. One of the most important changes in human history began long before cities, agriculture, or modern work. It began when our ancestors stood upright. Bipedalism transformed the human body. Walking on two legs freed the hands for carrying, tool use, and social interaction. It allowed early humans to travel long distances efficiently across open landscapes. Yet this transformation also reshaped the spine, pelvis, knees, and feet in ways that introduced new mechanical demands. The human spine developed gentle curves to balance the head and torso above the pelvis. These curves help absorb shock and distribute load during walking. In a body that moves frequently and varies its posture, this system functions effectively. The muscles surrounding the spine stabilize it during motion. The hips and legs share the work of support. However, standing upright also places vertical compression through the spinal discs and joints. This compression is not harmful in itself. It is part of normal function. Problems tend to arise when load becomes uneven or when supporting muscles weaken. In the ancestral world, upright posture was constantly interrupted by bending, squatting, climbing, and lying down. The spine moved through flexion, extension, and rotation throughout the day. This movement nourished the discs by promoting fluid exchange and prevented any single region from bearing continuous pressure. Modern life often reduces this variability. Many people spend extended hours in seated positions that maintain the spine in limited ranges. Whether slightly slouched or rigidly upright, the posture may remain similar for long periods. Over time, certain segments of the spine may experience repeated stress while others remain underused. The intervertebral discs rely on cycles of compression and decompression to maintain hydration. Without movement, these cycles are diminished. From an evolutionary perspective, the spine was not shaped for prolonged immobility. Fossil evidence from early hominins such as Australopithecus shows structural adaptations for upright walking, yet their daily activity would still have involved extensive movement across varied terrain. Even later Homo species, including Homo erectus and Homo sapiens, lived in environments requiring endurance walking and frequent changes in posture. Skeletal remains reveal signs of wear consistent with active lives, but the pattern of wear reflects dynamic use rather than prolonged static loading. The modern increase in lower back pain corresponds not only with aging populations but also with sedentary work. Epidemiological studies show associations between prolonged sitting and reports of back discomfort. While sitting alone does not cause all back pain, reduced movement combined with weak stabilizing muscles increases vulnerability. The spine, evolved to balance and move, becomes a structure held in place by furniture rather than by muscular coordination. There is also a neurological dimension. The spinal cord carries pain signals from peripheral tissues to the brain. When mechanical stress persists, sensory receptors in ligaments and discs send ongoing input. The brain interprets this information within context. If signals repeat frequently without adequate recovery, the nervous system may increase its sensitivity. This amplification can occur even without visible structural damage. Thus, the upright body that once enabled survival across vast landscapes now operates within enclosed spaces that restrict its natural range. Bipedalism itself is not a flaw. It is one of the defining features of our species. Yet its success depended on movement, when upright posture becomes fixed rather than fluid. The very structure that once expanded human possibility can become a source of chronic strain. The human spine is often described as a column, yet it behaves less like a rigid pillar and more like a flexible chain. It consists of individual vertebrae separated by discs that cushion and distribute force. Surrounding this structure are layers of muscles and connective tissue that provide stability. In a moving body, these elements share responsibility. The deep abdominal muscles, the muscles along the back, and those around the pelvis coordinate subtly with each step, each turn, each shift of weight. This coordination evolved in a world where balance was constantly tested by uneven ground, sudden changes in direction, and the need to carry loads over distance. When the spine bends, twists, and extends through its natural range, forces are spread across multiple tissues. Modern environments often reduce this coordination. Sitting in a supportive chair reduces the demand on stabilizing muscles. Over time, these muscles may become less responsive. The body still stands and walks, but the subtle endurance capacity of deep stabilizers may decline. When these muscles do not activate effectively, passive structures such as ligaments and discs bear a greater proportion of load. Passive tissues are strong but not designed to sustain prolonged strain without muscular assistance. The discomfort that develops may not be immediate. It may appear gradually as fatigue, stiffness, or dull aching. From an evolutionary perspective, this shift is significant. The human spine was never intended to function primarily as a static support held in one position for hours. Fossil evidence suggests that early Homo species engaged in endurance walking and complex tool use that required frequent bending and lifting. These activities would have maintained spinal mobility and muscular endurance. The daily pattern reinforced the relationship between motion and stability. In contrast, the repetitive static posture of modern work environments alters that relationship. Another factor involves load distribution. In ancestral contexts, carrying loads such as gathered plants or hunted animals often required asymmetrical effort. This might seem harmful, yet such variation can stimulate balanced muscular adaptation when combined with other diverse movements. In modern life, asymmetry often takes the form of consistent patterns such as holding a phone to one side, leaning toward a computer screen, or carrying a bag on the same shoulder daily. The difference lies in repetition without variation. When one side of the body is favored repeatedly without compensatory movement, muscular imbalances may develop. The spine adapts to the pattern imposed upon it. Neurological adaptation also plays a role. The brain maintains internal maps of the body based on sensory input. When movement variety decreases, these maps can become less precise. Studies in motor control suggest that reduced movement diversity may influence coordination and increase vulnerability to strain. The body relies on feedback from muscles and joints to regulate posture. If that feedback becomes limited or repetitive, subtle errors in alignment may persist longer than they would in a more dynamic environment. The consequence is not necessarily structural damage visible on imaging. Many individuals with back pain show minimal abnormalities on scans. Instead, chronic discomfort may reflect altered coordination, muscle endurance deficits, and persistent neural sensitivity. The spine remains structurally capable, yet its functional environment has narrowed. Bipedal posture continues to define our species, but its long-term comfort depends on motion. When motion becomes limited and repetitive, the flexible chain of vertebrae is asked to behave like a rigid column. Over time, that mismatch between design and demand contributes to the experience of chronic strain. There is another quiet dimension to the upright human body that becomes visible only when we consider time. Standing on two legs did not simply change how we move. It changed how gravity acts on us every hour of every day. From the moment an infant begins to stand and walk, the spine begins a lifelong conversation with gravity. In early human environments, that conversation unfolded in landscapes that demanded balance, agility, and frequent shifts of position. The body rarely held one alignment for long. Even when resting, posture was adjusted in response to ground texture, temperature, and social interaction. The forces of gravity were met with constant micro-movements. Modern life alters this relationship. Gravity remains unchanged, but the surfaces and tools that mediate it have transformed. Chairs, desks, and vehicles hold the body in fixed configurations while gravity continues to press downward. When posture remains static, gravitational load concentrates in predictable areas. Over years, this steady compression can influence spinal discs, facet joints, and surrounding ligaments. The change is subtle and gradual. It does not require dramatic trauma. It reflects the cumulative effect of time spent in limited positions. In evolutionary terms, the length of modern human lifespan amplifies this effect. many prehistoric individuals did not live into advanced age. Archaeological evidence suggests that while some individuals reached older adulthood, average life expectancy was lower due to infection, injury, and environmental risk. Today, improved sanitation, medicine, and nutrition allow many people to live decades longer. The spine that evolved to function robustly in active adulthood must now operate through extended years of reduced variability. Age-related changes such as disc dehydration and joint degeneration occur naturally, yet their impact may be heightened when combined with prolonged immobility. This does not imply that aging inevitably produces severe pain. Rather, it highlights how extended lifespan interacts with a movement-restricted environment. There is also a generational shift in how posture develops. Children growing up in environments dominated by chairs and screens may experience fewer opportunities for full-range spinal movement. Climbing trees, crawling on uneven ground, and carrying varied loads stimulate muscular coordination during developmental years. When these activities are reduced, certain stabilizing patterns may not be reinforced as strongly. The spinal curves that balance the body over the pelvis still form, but the endurance of supporting muscles may differ from those of previous generations who engaged in more outdoor, physically diverse play. The result is not immediate dysfunction, but a gradual predisposition toward fatigue under sustained static load. Over time, the nervous system monitors these tissues and adjusts sensitivity. Signals that once appeared only during acute strain may become more frequent under chronic mechanical stress. From the perspective of evolutionary history, this is a mismatch measured not in centuries but in tens of thousands of years. Bipedalism developed over millions of years, yet the sedentary modern environment has existed for only a small fraction of that time. Biological adaptation operates slowly compared to cultural change. The upright spine remains a remarkable achievement of evolution, enabling tool use, endurance travel, and complex social life. Yet its comfort depends on movement, variation, and balanced muscular support. When gravity acts upon a body held still for long durations across extended lifespans, the ancient design meets new demands. Chronic spinal discomfort can emerge not because the structure is poorly made, but because the conditions surrounding it differ profoundly from those under which it first evolved. Muscles are often thought of as engines that produce force, yet in evolutionary terms they are also guardians. They protect joints, absorb shock, and regulate how load moves through the skeleton. In the environments where early humans lived, muscles were used throughout the day in varied ways. Walking across long distances required endurance in the legs. Climbing and lifting demanded strength in the arms and back. Squatting while preparing food engaged the hips and core. These actions were not organized workouts. They were woven into survival. The body adapted by maintaining a baseline level of muscular engagement that supported the spine and joints almost continuously. When muscles contract and relax in balanced patterns, they stabilize joints dynamically. This dynamic stability reduces strain on passive tissues, such as cartilage and ligaments. Modern life often reduces the need for this constant engagement. Large muscle groups may remain underused for extended periods. Elevators replace stairs. Vehicles replace walking. Tools reduce lifting. The decrease is not absolute. People still move. Yet the intensity and frequency of varied muscular demand may be lower than in ancestral contexts. Over months and years, muscles adapt to the level of activity required of them. If that requirement diminishes, strength and endurance can decline gradually. This process is well documented in physiology. Reduced load leads to measurable decreases in muscle mass and power. The decline does not occur overnight. It reflects cumulative adaptation to environment. When certain muscles weaken, joints they once protected may experience greater mechanical stress. Consider the relationship between the abdominal muscles and the lumbar spine. These muscles help regulate spinal motion during bending and lifting. If their endurance decreases, spinal segments may move in less controlled ways under load. The result may be small but repeated strain. The same principle applies to the shoulder, where muscles coordinate to stabilize the joint during reaching and carrying. In ancestral settings, varied upper body tasks maintain this coordination. In modern environments dominated by limited repetitive movements, some stabilizers may become underactive while others overcompensate. Chronic pain can emerge when protective muscular systems lose balance. Anthropological research comparing skeletal remains from different historical periods shows changes in bone density and muscle attachment markers. Populations engaged in high levels of physical labor often display stronger bone adaptations linked to muscular force. This does not mean they were free from injury. It indicates that their musculoskeletal systems developed under consistent load. In contrast, industrial and post-industrial societies show patterns associated with reduced habitual physical activity. These shifts correspond to broader changes in daily life. There is also a neurological component. Muscles rely on regular activation to maintain coordination. The brain sends signals that refine movement patterns over time. When activity variety decreases, motor control can become less precise. Subtle instability may arise without conscious awareness. The pain system monitors these changes. If tissues experience unfamiliar or poorly distributed stress, sensory receptors transmit signals upward. The brain evaluates them in light of context, memory, and expectation. What once functioned as a robust protective network can become a source of persistent discomfort when environmental demands narrow. The human body did not evolve to eliminate effort. It evolved to manage it. Muscles were central to that management. When daily life reduces their role, the burden shifts elsewhere. Chronic pain may reflect not only tissue strain, but also the gradual withdrawal of muscular guardians that once shared the work of supporting an upright, moving body. Muscle does not only generate movement, it also communicates constantly with the nervous system. Every contraction sends feedback about tension, length, and position. This feedback helps the brain maintain a clear map of the body. In the ancestral world, that map was refreshed throughout the day by diverse actions. Climbing a slope required different muscle recruitment than descending it. Carrying an object on one side altered balance. Kneeling on uneven ground shifted weight through the hips and ankles. These frequent adjustments strengthened both muscle tissue and neural coordination. The body learned to distribute load smoothly because it was required to do so. Modern routines often narrow this sensory conversation. When movement becomes limited and repetitive, the feedback sent to the brain follows a similar pattern. Sitting for prolonged periods provides little variation in joint angle or muscle length. Small, repeated hand motions dominate certain tasks, while larger muscle groups remain relatively inactive. Over time, the nervous system may become highly tuned to a few specific movement patterns while others are neglected. This selective tuning can alter coordination. Muscles that are seldom activated may respond more slowly when called upon, while overused muscles may remain tense even at rest. The imbalance does not require injury to develop. It reflects adaptation to environment. Scientific studies on motor control show that reduced variability in movement can influence muscle activation timing. When stabilizing muscles do not engage at the appropriate moment, joint loading can increase. The spine, hips, and shoulders are particularly sensitive to such changes because they rely on coordinated muscle groups for support. A slight delay in activation repeated thousands of times may contribute to tissue fatigue. In ancestral contexts, the constant need for balance and adaptation likely reinforced timely activation patterns. The ground was rarely level, and tasks were rarely identical from one day to the next. There is also an energy dimension. Muscle tissue is metabolically active. Regular engagement supports circulation and nutrient exchange within surrounding tissues. When muscle activity decreases, blood flow patterns change. Connective tissues may receive less mechanical stimulation, which influences their resilience. This does not imply that inactivity alone causes chronic pain, but it highlights how biological systems depend on use to maintain capacity. From an evolutionary viewpoint, energy expenditure was unavoidable. Food acquisition required effort. Shelter construction required effort. Social interaction often occurred alongside physical tasks. Today, energy conservation is built into daily life. While this has clear advantages for survival and productivity, it alters the baseline level of muscular demand. The nervous system, still tuned to expect engagement, may interpret subtle signals from deconditioned tissue as warnings. Chronic pain can thus arise not solely from damage, but from altered communication between muscle and brain. The system designed to protect against acute injury now monitors tissues that are less prepared for load. When those tissues are suddenly asked to perform lifting a heavy object after long inactivity, for example, the stress may exceed their conditioned capacity. The discomfort that follows may linger if the underlying imbalance remains. The body evolved in an environment where muscles were constantly reminded of their role. In a modern setting where that reminder is less frequent, protective mechanisms may become more sensitive to even modest strain. Muscles also change with time in ways that are easy to overlook. In early human groups, physical strength was not a separate goal. It was a condition of daily survival. Children developed muscle through play that resembled work running, climbing, carrying. Adults maintained strength because their environment required it. Aging occurred, but it unfolded within a context of regular physical demand. The gradual decline of muscle mass that accompanies age was balanced, to some degree, by lifelong engagement. In modern societies, the pattern can differ. Many individuals experience years or even decades of relatively low physical challenge during adulthood. When muscle use decreases, a process known as sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength, may begin earlier or progress more quickly. Sarcopenia is a well-documented biological phenomenon. It reflects natural changes in hormone levels, nerve function, and protein synthesis over time. Yet its impact is shaped by environment. Regular resistance and varied movement can slow its progression. Limited activity may accelerate functional decline. This interaction between aging biology and modern lifestyle has direct implications for chronic pain. As muscle mass decreases, joint loading patterns shift. Cartilage and ligaments may bear a greater proportion of force. Reduced muscular endurance can also affect posture, especially during prolonged standing or sitting. Subtle fatigue may lead to compensatory movements that place uneven stress on certain structures. These shifts are not dramatic events. They accumulate quietly across years. Anthropological evidence indicates that some prehistoric individuals survived into older age and displayed signs of degenerative joint changes. However, their daily movement patterns likely remained more varied than those common in many industrialized societies. Even in later life, tasks required walking, lifting, and adjusting to terrain. The aging process unfolded within a framework of continued physical engagement. Today, extended lifespan combined with reduced baseline activity creates a different context. People often live decades beyond retirement age, sometimes with limited structured movement. Medical advances have reduced mortality from infection and injury, yet the musculoskeletal system still reflects its evolutionary origins. It was shaped in populations where long-term sedentary living was rare. The nervous system responds to these changes as well. Muscle fibers are connected to motor neurons that transmit signals from the brain. With aging, some motor neurons are lost. Regular activation helps preserve neural connections. When activity is sparse, coordination may decline more noticeably. This can influence balance and increase the risk of minor strains. Each small episode of discomfort can reinforce sensitivity within the pain system, particularly if recovery is incomplete. Chronic pain in later life, therefore, often reflects multiple interacting factors: biological aging, reduced muscular support, cumulative mechanical stress, and neural adaptation. It is not simply a failure of tissue. It is the outcome of a body operating within an environment that differs from the one in which its protective systems evolved. The muscular guardians that once carried much of the load may gradually withdraw their support when not regularly engaged. As they do, passive structures and sensitive neural pathways assume a greater role. In a world that allows long life but often minimizes daily physical demand, the ancient relationship between muscle, movement, and joint protection becomes altered. Chronic discomfort can be understood, in part, as a signal emerging from that altered relationship. Pain does not live only in muscles, joints, or bones. It is ultimately constructed in the brain. Sensory receptors in the body detect heat, pressure, inflammation, and chemical changes. These signals travel through nerves to the spinal cord and upward to various regions of the brain. Yet the brain does not simply record them, it evaluates them. It compares incoming information with memory, expectation, emotional state, and perceived threat. In ancestral environments, this evaluation often occurred in clear contexts. A visible wound, a fall from height, or the bite of an animal provided unmistakable evidence of danger. The brain's interpretation aligned closely with physical reality. Pain signaled injury, and recovery followed healing. In modern life, the situation is often less direct. Tissues may experience low-level mechanical stress without visible damage. Emotional stress may increase muscle tension. Sleep deprivation may heighten sensitivity. The brain integrates these influences alongside sensory input. Neuroscientific research shows that chronic pain involves changes in how the nervous system processes signals. Repeated stimulation of pain pathways can lower the threshold at which neurons fire. This process, sometimes called central sensitization, reflects the nervous system's capacity to adapt. Adaptation is usually protective. In a dangerous environment, becoming more sensitive to potential harm could prevent severe injury. However, when sensitivity persists after tissues have healed or when threat is ambiguous, the system may continue to generate pain signals that outlast their original purpose. From an evolutionary standpoint, the brain evolved to prioritize survival over comfort. It is biased toward caution. If there is uncertainty about threat, the safer option from a biological perspective is to err on the side of protection. A slight increase in pain sensitivity may reduce risk of further injury. In the short term, this is advantageous. In the long term, within a modern environment that includes prolonged psychological stress and repetitive physical strain, heightened sensitivity may become persistent. Anthropological evidence does not allow direct measurement of pain perception in prehistoric populations, yet skeletal remains show that injuries often healed. Bones display signs of fracture repair and joint remodeling. This suggests that individuals survived trauma long enough for healing to occur. The pain system likely quieted as tissues recovered. Chronic pain lasting many years may have been less common, partly because average lifespan was shorter and daily movement patterns differed. Modern populations live longer and face ongoing low-level stressors. Work demands, financial pressures, and social factors can activate neural circuits associated with vigilance. These circuits overlap with those that process pain. Functional imaging studies demonstrate that areas of the brain involved in emotion and attention are active during chronic pain states. The experience of pain becomes intertwined with mood and expectation. This does not mean chronic pain is imagined or voluntary. It reflects the complexity of a nervous system shaped for rapid adaptation. The brain that once helped our ancestors avoid predators and survive harsh climates now operates within environments dominated by cognitive and social stressors rather than physical threats. When the nervous system remains in a state of heightened alertness, pain thresholds may shift. Signals that once would have faded may persist. The protective bias built into our evolutionary history continues to function. It simply does so in a world very different from the one in which it first developed. The brain does not evaluate pain signals in isolation. It continuously asks a silent question: how dangerous is this? The answer shapes how intense the experience becomes. In evolutionary settings, danger often had clear physical markers. A deep cut bled visibly. A broken bone prevented weight-bearing. Extreme cold or heat threatened survival. The brain linked sensory input with obvious environmental cues. When the threat resolved and healing progressed, the level of alarm usually decreased. The system was calibrated to respond strongly when survival was at risk, and to quiet when safety returned. Modern life complicates this calibration. Many sources of threat are less visible and more prolonged. Financial uncertainty, social comparison, work deadlines, and constant information flow activate stress responses within the body. These stress responses involve hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline, which prepare muscles and organs for action. In short bursts, this activation is protective. In ancestral environments, stress responses were often tied to immediate events, such as escaping a predator or confronting conflict. Once the event ended, physiological arousal gradually subsided. In contrast, contemporary stressors can persist for months or years without a clear physical resolution. Chronic stress influences how the brain processes sensory information. Research in neuroscience demonstrates that stress can lower pain thresholds, making sensations more intense. Stress-related changes in brain regions that regulate emotion and attention can amplify the perception of discomfort. Muscles may remain slightly tense under ongoing psychological pressure, increasing mechanical load on joints. Sleep disruption associated with stress further reduces the body's capacity to recover. In this way, emotional and environmental factors interact with physical signals. The pain that emerges may feel localized in the back, neck, or shoulders, yet its intensity is shaped by broader neural context. This interaction reflects evolutionary priorities. The human brain evolved to integrate physical and social information because both affected survival. Social exclusion, for example, carried risks in small ancestral groups. Neural circuits processing social pain overlap with those processing physical pain. This overlap suggests that the boundary between physical injury and emotional threat is not rigid. The same neural networks that once ensured sensitivity to group dynamics now operate within complex modern societies where social evaluation and comparison are constant. Chronic pain can thus be influenced by factors beyond tissue damage. It does not mean the pain is imagined or psychological in a simplistic sense. It means that the brain, shaped to detect threat in multiple domains, interprets bodily signals within a broad landscape of experience. In ancestral life, prolonged psychological stress without physical resolution was likely less common. Threats were acute and tangible. Today, persistent cognitive and emotional demands create a background level of vigilance. The nervous system, primed by evolution to err toward protection, may maintain heightened sensitivity under such conditions. When small mechanical strains occur in this context, the brain may amplify them more readily. Chronic pain, therefore, often reflects the convergence of physical load and sustained stress. The protective system remains intact. It is responding as it was shaped to respond. The difference lies in the environment surrounding it, where signals of danger are less visible yet more enduring. Over time, when pain signals continue to travel through the nervous system, the pathways that carry them can change. Neurons that repeatedly fire together tend to strengthen their connections. This principle, observed in many areas of brain function, supports learning and memory. It also applies to pain. When discomfort persists for weeks or months, the neural circuits involved in processing it may become more efficient at activating. The system becomes practiced at producing pain. From an evolutionary standpoint, this plasticity is valuable. If a particular area of the body has been injured and remains vulnerable, heightened sensitivity can prevent further harm. The brain remembers the location and reinforces caution. In ancestral environments, this reinforcement likely served a short-term protective purpose. Injuries were often linked to clear events, and once healing restored strength, the need for heightened sensitivity diminished. In modern contexts, however, low-level strain and stress may persist long after tissue healing should have occurred. The nervous system does not always receive a clear signal that danger has ended. Without that resolution, the reinforced pathways may remain active. This process does not imply that chronic pain is imagined or voluntary. It reflects the adaptive capacity of neural tissue. Functional imaging studies have shown that individuals with chronic pain often display altered patterns of brain activity compared to those without pain. Regions associated with emotion, attention, and memory become more integrated into the pain network. The experience of pain shifts from being a simple sensory event to a more complex state involving anticipation and vigilance. In ancestral settings, anticipation of pain could prevent risky behavior in dangerous terrain. In a modern office or home environment, anticipation may persist even when no immediate threat is present. Another dimension involves the spinal cord, where sensory signals are filtered before reaching the brain. Repeated stimulation can reduce the effectiveness of inhibitory mechanisms that normally dampen pain signals. This phenomenon contributes to increased sensitivity. It represents another example of an ancient protective system operating within new conditions. The body evolved to adjust sensitivity in response to environmental demands. When the environment provides persistent signals of stress, whether mechanical, emotional, or social, the adjustment may become long-lasting. The role of expectation is also significant. If previous movements have been associated with pain, the brain may anticipate discomfort before the movement begins. This anticipation can subtly alter muscle activation patterns, increasing tension and reinforcing the cycle. Such feedback loops are not conscious decisions. They are automatic protective strategies shaped by experience. In early human life, varied movement and clear injury resolution likely limited the duration of such loops. In modern life, where repetitive tasks and ongoing stress are common, the loops may persist. Chronic pain can therefore be understood as the product of layered adaptations: tissue strain, muscular imbalance, stress responses, and neural reinforcement. Each layer reflects evolutionary mechanisms designed to preserve survival. None were shaped with the expectation of decades spent in sedentary routines under continuous psychological demand. The nervous system continues to adapt as it always has. The challenge lies in recognizing that its sensitivity is rooted in ancient priorities that do not always align with modern patterns of living. When we look at the bones of people who lived thousands of years ago, we see something quiet and sobering. Archaeologists have uncovered skeletons with healed fractures, worn joints, and signs of physical strain. Early humans were not free from injury. They fell, they carried heavy loads, they aged. Some skeletons show clear evidence of osteoarthritis, especially in weight-bearing joints. This reminds us that pain is not a modern invention. It has accompanied our species since its beginning. Yet there is an important difference between the presence of injury and the pattern of long-lasting, widespread chronic pain seen in many modern populations. In small prehistoric groups, average life expectancy was lower than it is today. Many individuals died young from infection, trauma, or environmental hardship. Those who survived into later adulthood likely remained physically active because daily survival required it. Even aging bodies continued to walk, gather, prepare food, and contribute to group life. The context of aging was different. Movement did not stop at midlife. When we examine skeletal remains from hunter-gatherer societies, we often see joint changes linked to specific repetitive tasks, such as grinding grain or carrying loads. These changes suggest heavy use, yet they also reflect a life of varied movement. The environment did not confine the body to a single narrow posture for decades. Terrain, weather, and task diversity demanded ongoing adaptation. In contrast, modern skeletal studies and epidemiological surveys show high rates of chronic low back pain, neck pain, and generalized musculoskeletal discomfort. These conditions often persist for years, sometimes without clear structural damage visible on imaging. The difference may lie not only in injury but in lifespan and lifestyle. Today, millions of people live into their 70s, 80s, and beyond. This extended lifespan allows degenerative processes to unfold over longer periods. Cartilage thins, discs lose hydration, bone density changes. These biological processes are part of aging. However, the environment in which aging now occurs includes prolonged sitting, reduced variability of movement, and sustained psychological stress. The archaeological record also reveals social cooperation. Some skeletons show severe injuries that healed, indicating that injured individuals were supported by their group during recovery. Rest and gradual return to activity may have been more integrated into daily rhythms. In modern societies, economic pressures and fragmented social support can lead individuals to continue working through discomfort, potentially prolonging strain. Another difference involves medical intervention. Contemporary medicine allows people to survive injuries that would have been fatal in the past. While this is a profound achievement, it also means more individuals live with long-term consequences of trauma. Surgical procedures and treatments can restore function, yet recovery may still involve persistent pain pathways shaped by neural adaptation. The archaeological perspective reminds us that human bodies have always faced physical challenges. However, the scale and distribution of chronic pain in modern populations suggests that something about the present environment interacts with ancient biology in new ways. Injury alone does not explain the widespread, persistent discomfort reported today. The bones of our ancestors show resilience and wear, but they also reflect lives structured around movement, cooperation, and environmental variability. Chronic pain in the modern sense may be less about the inevitability of aging, and more about the conditions in which aging now takes place. When archaeologists study ancient skeletons, they often look not only for signs of injury, but also for patterns across populations. In some prehistoric sites, evidence shows individuals who survived serious trauma, fractured limbs that healed in alignment, skull injuries with bone remodeling, joints that continued to function after visible damage. These findings suggest that while injury was common, recovery was possible, and life continued after healing. What appears less common in the archaeological record is widespread skeletal evidence of long-term immobilization associated with modern sedentary patterns. Bones adapt to mechanical load. When load is present, bone tissue becomes denser and stronger. When load decreases significantly, bone density can decline. Studies comparing skeletal remains from pre-agricultural hunter-gatherer groups with those from later agricultural societies reveal differences in bone robustness. Early hunter-gatherers often show thicker cortical bone and stronger attachment sites for muscles, reflecting higher habitual activity. With the shift to agriculture, some populations display reductions in skeletal robusticity, likely linked to changes in diet and activity patterns. This transition marked one of the earliest large-scale changes in how humans move daily. Farming required repetitive tasks such as hoeing, grinding grain, and carrying loads in consistent patterns. These activities could produce localized wear, yet even agricultural life involved outdoor labor, walking, and seasonal variation. The industrial era introduced another shift. Mechanization reduced the need for whole-body labor in many settings, while increasing repetitive, narrow movements. Urbanization concentrated populations in enclosed spaces. Over time, these structural changes altered how mechanical forces were distributed across the body. The archaeological record does not directly capture subjective pain experience, but it reflects adaptation to physical demand. Modern imaging studies show that many people with chronic pain do not exhibit severe structural abnormalities. Conversely, some individuals with significant degenerative changes report little discomfort. This contrast suggests that tissue change alone does not determine pain. It interacts with neural processing and environmental context. In ancestral populations, mechanical adaptation was closely aligned with daily tasks. Bones thickened in response to walking long distances. Muscles left clear marks at their attachment sites. The body and environment were in continuous dialogue. In contrast, modern environments can create mismatches between biological expectation and actual demand. Reduced overall load combined with repetitive microstrain produces patterns not commonly seen in earlier periods. There is also the matter of survival thresholds. In prehistoric contexts, severe chronic disability could limit participation in daily survival tasks. Those with debilitating pain may have faced greater difficulty obtaining resources. Modern society, through medical and social support systems, allows individuals to live with chronic conditions that would once have been more limiting. This is a profound humanitarian advancement, yet it also means that chronic pain is more visible and more widely reported. The archaeological lens teaches that human bodies have always adapted to the forces around them. The difference today may not be the presence of wear, but the type of forces applied and the duration over which they persist. Chronic pain in modern life reflects an interaction between extended lifespan, altered activity patterns, and neural sensitivity, an interaction that differs from the patterns visible in ancient bones shaped by different daily rhythms. When we place ancient skeletons beside modern medical data, a pattern slowly becomes clearer. The human body has always shown signs of wear. Joint surfaces from prehistoric remains sometimes display smoothing and small bony growths associated with osteoarthritis. Vertebrae can show compression changes. Teeth reveal grinding and stress. These traces remind us that physical strain is not new, yet the distribution and context of these changes differ from what is often seen in contemporary clinical settings. In small-scale societies, skeletal wear tended to correspond closely with specific life tasks. A population that carried heavy loads on the head might show changes in the cervical spine. A community that relied on grinding grain might display wear in the wrists and shoulders. The strain was linked to visible patterns of labor. Modern musculoskeletal pain, however, is frequently widespread and not always tied to a single identifiable task. Lower back pain appears across diverse occupations, including those with minimal heavy lifting. Neck and shoulder discomfort are common among people engaged primarily in seated work. This suggests that the mechanism is not simply heavy labor, but prolonged static posture and repetitive micro-movement combined with neural sensitivity. The archaeological record also reflects a different social tempo. Prehistoric groups often lived in small communities with shared tasks and interdependence. While hardship was real, daily rhythms were structured around daylight and seasonal cycles. Periods of intense labor alternated with periods of relative rest dictated by environmental conditions. Modern societies operate on extended schedules, supported by artificial light and continuous economic activity. The body's recovery cycles can be shortened or fragmented. Sleep disruption, which influences pain perception, may be more prevalent today. Another dimension involves cultural perception of pain. In early societies, pain may have been interpreted primarily as a sign of injury or aging, embedded within communal experience. Today, chronic pain is recognized as a medical condition, leading more individuals to report and seek treatment for it. Increased awareness does not create pain, but it changes how it is understood and managed. This shift makes chronic pain more visible in population statistics. There is also the issue of lifespan extension through medical care. Individuals now survive conditions that once would have been fatal, including severe trauma and infections. While this extends life, it may also increase the number of people living with long-term musculoskeletal changes. The interaction between improved survival and persistent discomfort is part of the modern landscape. From an evolutionary perspective, the most striking difference is the pace of environmental change. Cultural and technological shifts have occurred within a few thousand years, and in some cases within decades. Biological evolution operates far more slowly. The skeletal evidence of our ancestors reveals bodies adapted to active, variable lives shaped by natural constraints. Modern data reveal bodies navigating extended lifespans, reduced movement diversity, and sustained cognitive stress. Chronic pain sits at the intersection of these forces. It is not proof that the human body is flawed. It reflects the tension between ancient adaptation and modern structure. The bones of the past show resilience within a specific context. The bodies of today reveal how that same resilience responds when context changes more quickly than biology can follow. One of the most profound changes in human history is not visible in a single bone or joint. It is visible in numbers. For most of our species' existence, relatively few individuals lived into advanced old age. Life expectancy at birth in prehistoric populations was low, largely because many children did not survive early years. Those who reached adulthood could live for decades, yet the proportion of elderly individuals within the population remained small. In modern societies, this pattern has shifted dramatically. Advances in sanitation, nutrition, vaccination, and medicine have extended average lifespan. Large segments of the population now live into their 70s, 80s, and beyond. This demographic transformation reshapes how chronic pain appears at the population level. Aging tissues undergo gradual biological change. Cartilage that cushions joints becomes thinner. Intervertebral discs lose hydration and elasticity. Muscle mass declines unless actively maintained. These processes are part of normal aging. In ancestral settings, fewer individuals experience the later stages of these changes simply because fewer reached advanced age. Today, extended lifespan allows cumulative mechanical stress and biological aging to interact over much longer periods. The pain system, shaped in populations where extreme longevity was uncommon, now operates within a society where long life is expected. This does not imply that aging inevitably produces chronic pain. Many older adults remain active and relatively comfortable, yet the statistical increase in older individuals raises the overall prevalence of musculoskeletal discomfort. When a larger proportion of the population lives through decades of repetitive postures and limited movement, the number of people reporting persistent pain naturally increases. Demography alters perception as well as biology. In a small prehistoric group, an elder with joint pain may have been one among few. In a modern city, millions of older adults may share similar complaints. The scale of the phenomenon changes social awareness and healthcare focus. From an evolutionary perspective, the human body did not undergo genetic redesign in the past few centuries. The structures of joints, muscles, and neural circuits remain largely the same. What has changed is the length of time those structures are asked to function. Extended lifespan amplifies the consequences of both beneficial and harmful habits. Decades of sedentary behavior, repetitive strain, or inadequate sleep accumulate effects that shorter lifespans might not have revealed as clearly. There is also an intergenerational dimension. Children growing up today often observe older adults living many years with chronic discomfort. This shapes expectations about aging. In evolutionary history, the experience of old age was less common and perhaps less prolonged. The meaning of pain across the lifespan was different. Chronic pain in modern life is therefore not only a medical issue but a demographic one. As populations age, healthcare systems encounter increasing numbers of individuals with degenerative joint changes and persistent neural sensitivity. The extended timeline of modern life interacts with ancient biological systems in ways that were rare in earlier epochs. The body continues to function according to principles shaped by deep evolutionary time. The society in which it functions has expanded the years over which those principles must operate. Chronic pain becomes more visible not because evolution failed, but because life now extends further than it once did. Extended lifespan does more than increase the number of older individuals. It changes the entire structure of daily life across generations. In small ancestral groups, children, adults, and elders often shared similar environments and patterns of movement. Skills were passed down through participation in common tasks. Even when physical strength declined with age, elders remained embedded in routines that required walking, sitting on the ground, preparing food, and participating in social life within close proximity to nature. Aging unfolded within continuity. The body slowed, yet the rhythm of life did not shift dramatically away from movement. Modern societies separate generations in ways that alter this continuity. Children attend school in seated classrooms. Adults work in offices or specialized environments. Many older adults retire into lifestyles that may involve reduced physical demand and increased time indoors. The physical patterns of one stage of life differ significantly from another. This segmentation can reduce the lifelong consistency of muscular engagement. An individual may experience intense academic sitting during youth, followed by sedentary professional work and later reduced activity during retirement. The cumulative mechanical exposure across decades becomes narrow and repetitive. From a demographic perspective, the concentration of older adults in certain communities also influences shared behavior. In regions with aging populations, infrastructure may prioritize convenience and reduced exertion. While accessibility improvements are essential for safety, they can further reduce baseline physical demand. The environment adapts to support aging bodies, yet this adaptation can inadvertently limit opportunities for varied movement. The interaction between extended lifespan and environmental design creates a feedback loop. The more a society anticipates reduced physical capacity with age, the more it structures space to minimize exertion. Over time, this can accelerate deconditioning, especially if active alternatives are not integrated. Anthropological observations of traditional societies with multi-generational living arrangements suggest that elders often continue to contribute to daily activities at levels appropriate to their capacity. Movement remains part of identity and social participation. In contrast, modern retirement can involve a sudden drop in structured physical routine. The nervous system and musculoskeletal system respond to this shift. Muscles that were once engaged regularly may weaken more rapidly. Joints may experience altered loading patterns. Chronic pain can intensify during these transitions, not solely because of aging biology, but because of abrupt changes in movement patterns. The demographic shift toward older populations also influences medical practice. Chronic pain management becomes a larger focus of healthcare systems. Awareness increases, and more individuals seek diagnosis and treatment. While this improves care, it also highlights the scale of the issue. From an evolutionary viewpoint, such a large proportion of the population living many decades beyond reproductive years is historically unusual. Human societies have always included elders, yet never at the numerical scale seen today. The ancient pain system now functions within bodies that may spend 40 or 50 years beyond peak physical capacity. Chronic pain becomes part of a demographic reality shaped by cultural success in extending life. The body continues to adapt as it always has, but the context of aging has transformed. There is another layer to demographic change that is less visible but deeply influential. When a population ages, the collective memory of what is considered normal shifts. In societies where few people reached advanced age, chronic joint pain in later life may have been relatively rare simply because fewer individuals lived long enough to experience prolonged degenerative change. In modern societies where extended lifespan is common, Persistent discomfort in midlife and later adulthood is often treated as expected. This expectation subtly shapes behavior. If pain is anticipated as an unavoidable companion of aging, individuals may reduce activity preemptively. Reduced movement then accelerates deconditioning, which can increase discomfort, reinforcing the expectation. From an evolutionary perspective, expectations about pain were likely grounded in direct observation of injury or visible wear. The link between cause and sensation was often concrete. In contrast, modern chronic pain frequently lacks a single defining event. It may emerge gradually in midlife after years of similar work patterns. Without a clear injury, the meaning of pain becomes more complex. It can generate anxiety about long-term decline. Anxiety itself influences neural processing of pain, increasing vigilance and sensitivity. The demographic reality of widespread chronic pain in aging populations thus interacts with psychological context. There is also a shift in how aging bodies are supported socially. In ancestral groups, elders often remained integrated into daily tasks, even as their physical capacity changed. Knowledge, storytelling, and decision-making were valued roles. Movement continued at a pace appropriate to ability. In modern urban settings, older adults may experience social isolation or limited engagement in communal physical activity. Social isolation has been associated in research with increased reports of pain and decreased overall well-being. The nervous system evolved in tightly connected groups where physical and social signals were intertwined. Separation from community alters that landscape. Extended lifespan also means that cumulative minor injuries have more time to leave residual effects. A sprain in youth, a period of heavy labor in early adulthood, years of desk work in midlife, each stage adds small layers of mechanical history. Over decades, these layers interact. The body's tissues remodel continuously, yet they also carry traces of past load. The pain system monitors this accumulated history. It does not distinguish between cultural eras. It responds to current input shaped by long-term adaptation. The demographic expansion of older age groups brings this accumulation into focus. Chronic pain becomes more prevalent not simply because the body is fragile, but because the timeline of exposure has lengthened. Evolution shaped the human body for survival in environments where few individuals lived long enough to experience 50 or 60 years of similar mechanical routines. Modern life extends that exposure. The result is a new statistical landscape in which persistent pain is common. This prevalence influences public health priorities, medical research, and personal expectations. Chronic pain is no longer a rare outcome of severe injury. It is a widespread experience embedded in the demographic structure of modern society. The ancient biological systems that once guided brief protective responses now operate across lifespans far longer than those typical for much of human history. Comfort is one of the great achievements of modern civilization. Controlled temperature, soft seating, cushioned footwear, and smooth surfaces reduce immediate physical hardship. Compared to the open landscapes in which early humans lived, modern environments protect the body from cold, heat, rough terrain, and sudden environmental stress. From the perspective of survival, this is an extraordinary success. Yet comfort also changes how the body engages with its surroundings. In ancestral environments, the ground was rarely even. Stones, roots, and shifting soil required constant micro-adjustments of posture. Bare or minimally protected feet sensed texture and pressure, guiding balance. The nervous system received continuous feedback from contact with the environment. These small adjustments strengthened stabilizing muscles and maintained joint mobility. Modern surfaces, by contrast, are engineered for predictability. Floors are flat, shoes cushion impact, chairs support posture. This predictability reduces the need for constant muscular correction. While this decreases acute strain, it also narrows sensory input. The feet, for example, contain numerous nerve endings that contribute to balance and posture. When thick soles and uniform surfaces reduce sensory stimulation, the nervous system receives less varied information. Over time, subtle aspects of coordination may diminish. The body adapts to the demands placed upon it, and when demand decreases, certain capacities recede. Temperature control represents another shift. Early humans experienced daily and seasonal fluctuations in climate. Cold required muscle activation to generate heat. Heat required circulation adjustments and behavioral adaptation. These fluctuations challenged the body's regulatory systems. Modern climate control maintains stable indoor temperatures for much of the day. While this protects against extreme exposure, it also reduces metabolic variability. Research suggests that mild environmental challenges can stimulate adaptive responses in the cardiovascular and metabolic systems. When these challenges are minimized, baseline physiological engagement may decrease. The connection to chronic pain lies not in comfort itself, but in reduced variability. Biological systems thrive on moderate fluctuation. Muscles and connective tissues respond to changing loads. The nervous system refines coordination through diverse sensory input. When the environment becomes highly consistent, certain adaptive processes receive fewer stimuli. Over decades, this may contribute to reduced resilience under unexpected strain. Consider footwear. Anthropological and biomechanical studies indicate differences in foot structure and gait between populations that habitually walk barefoot and those that wear supportive shoes from early childhood. Supportive footwear protects against injury on hard surfaces, yet it can also alter foot muscle engagement. Weakened intrinsic foot muscles may influence alignment further up the kinetic chain, affecting knees and hips. These changes are subtle and cumulative. Comfort also influences rest patterns. Soft furniture encourages prolonged sitting in relaxed postures. While relaxation is beneficial in moderation, extended time in supported positions can diminish the low-level muscular activity that once maintained stability. The body's ancient design anticipated a world in which comfort was intermittent, not continuous. Chronic pain may reflect the gradual consequences of an environment that reduces physical challenge to near zero for large portions of the day. The pain system, tuned to detect imbalance and strain, responds when tissues are asked to perform beyond their conditioned capacity. Comfort protects against acute hardship, yet when it becomes constant, it alters the dialogue between body and environment in ways evolution did not anticipate. Comfort also reshapes how the body distributes effort across the day. In ancestral settings, effort was rarely optional. Food required gathering or hunting, water required carrying, shelter required maintenance. Even social life unfolded through shared physical tasks. The body's systems were engaged not in isolated workouts, but in continuous, moderate labor woven into routine. Effort and rest alternated naturally, guided by daylight and environmental demands. Modern comfort separates effort from necessity. Food is purchased rather than hunted. Water flows from taps. Climate remains stable regardless of season. Many forms of work involve cognitive effort rather than sustained physical movement. As a result, physical exertion becomes something scheduled rather than embedded. Some individuals compensate through structured exercise, yet large portions of the day may still be spent in minimal movement. This separation has biological implications. The human body evolved under conditions where muscle activation and energy expenditure were consistent parts of daily survival. When effort becomes optional, it is often postponed or reduced. Over time, baseline physical conditioning may decline. The musculoskeletal system adapts downward to the lower demand. When occasional exertion occurs, lifting a heavy object unexpectedly, performing a strenuous task after long inactivity, the body may be less prepared to manage load. The pain that follows is not solely the result of one event, but of reduced conditioning accumulated over years. There is also a metabolic dimension. Regular moderate activity influences circulation, inflammation, and tissue repair. Sedentary patterns have been associated in research with increased markers of low-grade systemic inflammation. While inflammation is a complex process essential for healing, persistent low-level inflammatory states may influence pain sensitivity. The ancestral environment exposed humans to physical challenges that periodically stimulated repair processes. Modern comfort reduces these challenges, potentially altering how repair mechanisms are regulated. Another subtle shift involves sensory contrast. In a world of fluctuating temperature, terrain, and light, the nervous system constantly recalibrated to change. Modern interiors offer consistent lighting, smooth surfaces, and controlled acoustics. While this stability supports productivity and safety, it narrows sensory variation. The brain adapts to predictability. When unexpected strain or discomfort occurs, the contrast may feel more pronounced. The ancient nervous system, designed to interpret varied signals, now receives long stretches of uniform input punctuated by isolated mechanical stress. This pattern may contribute to heightened perception of minor strain. Comfort also influences psychological framing. A world that minimizes hardship can make any persistent discomfort feel anomalous. In ancestral life, physical strain was an accepted part of existence. Today, the expectation of ease may increase attention to pain signals. Attention amplifies perception. When the brain focuses on discomfort, neural pathways associated with pain become more active. This does not imply weakness or exaggeration. It reflects how expectation and environment interact with sensory processing. Chronic pain within comfortable societies emerges from this complex interaction. The body was shaped to handle fluctuation, challenge, and intermittent rest. Continuous comfort alters that rhythm. The protective system of pain remains alert, yet the environment provides fewer opportunities for gradual conditioning. When strain appears in a body adapted to minimal daily challenge, the signal may linger. There is also a slower transformation that comfort brings, one that unfolds quietly across decades. When environments consistently remove friction, resistance, and variability, the body gradually recalibrates its expectations. Muscles adjust to minimal daily load. Joints experience narrower ranges of motion. The nervous system becomes accustomed to predictable surfaces and steady temperatures. None of these changes are dramatic in isolation. They accumulate subtly, shaping how resilient the body feels when faced with unexpected demand. In ancestral contexts, small daily challenges acted as continual rehearsal. Walking on uneven ground strengthened ankles and hips. Carrying water or gathered plants reinforced spinal endurance. Sleeping on firmer surfaces required subtle adjustments of posture. These modest stresses prepared tissues for larger ones. The body rarely encountered total inactivity. Even rest occurred within an environment that required awareness and slight muscular engagement. Modern comfort reduces this rehearsal. Consider transportation. In the past, reaching distant locations required walking or other forms of active travel. Today, vehicles carry the body with minimal physical contribution. Elevators replace stairs. Groceries are transported by cart rather than by hand over long distances. Each convenience saves energy, yet also removes small opportunities for conditioning. Over years, the cumulative absence of these micro-challenges lowers baseline capacity. When occasional physical effort is required, tissues may be less prepared to respond without strain. The immune and inflammatory systems are influenced as well. Research suggests that moderate physical activity supports regulation of inflammatory processes. When activity declines, markers of low-grade inflammation may increase. Inflammation is closely tied to pain perception. Heightened inflammatory signaling can sensitize nerve endings, making them more responsive to mechanical input. This does not imply that comfort directly causes inflammation, but that reduced physical engagement interacts with broader biological regulation. There is also a developmental aspect. Children raised in highly controlled environments may have fewer opportunities for unstructured physical exploration. Climbing, balancing, and rough play stimulate coordination and strengthen connective tissues during growth. When these experiences are limited, foundational stability may develop differently. The consequences may not appear until adulthood, when the demands of work and daily life increase. The body's resilience depends partly on early conditioning. Evolution shaped childhood as a period of learning through movement within natural landscapes. The more that landscapes are replaced by uniform indoor spaces, the more developmental input shifts. Comfort, therefore, changes not only adult behavior but the trajectory of physical adaptation across generations. Chronic pain can be seen as one expression of this long-term recalibration. The pain system monitors mechanical stress and internal balance. When a body accustomed to low variability encounters strain, the signal may be amplified. The environment of constant ease does not train tissues for fluctuation. It protects against acute hardship while reducing exposure to mild, strengthening stress. The ancient human organism evolved under conditions where moderate challenge was routine. In a world that minimizes challenge, resilience must often be cultivated intentionally rather than incidentally. Without that cultivation, the protective system of pain may respond more readily to ordinary demands. Modern work has changed not only what humans do, but how long and how narrowly they do it. In ancestral environments, tasks varied across hours and seasons. Hunting required tracking, sprinting, lifting, and carrying. Gathering involved bending, reaching, and walking over uneven ground. Even repetitive activities such as tool-making were interrupted by shifts in posture and environment. The body was exposed to diversity of movement within the same day. In contrast, many modern occupations concentrate activity into specific, limited patterns. Office work may involve sitting with hands positioned over a keyboard for extended periods. Factory work may require repeating the same arm motion thousands of times. Service roles may involve standing in a confined space without significant variation. These patterns share one feature: repetition without broad variation. Biological tissues respond differently to repetition than to diverse movement. When a single joint angle or muscle group is engaged repeatedly, microstrain can accumulate in the same region. Tendons and ligaments adapt slowly to repetitive load. If recovery time is insufficient, irritation may persist. Over months and years, such irritation can contribute to conditions commonly described as overuse injuries. However, many cases of chronic pain occur without a clear diagnosis of tendon rupture or structural failure. The discomfort reflects cumulative stress rather than dramatic damage. From an evolutionary standpoint, sustained repetition of identical small movements was uncommon. Even crafting tools or processing food required subtle shifts in grip and posture because the materials and surfaces were irregular. The environment itself prevented perfect repetition. Modern tools and standardized tasks remove that irregularity. Efficiency increases, but mechanical variability decreases. This reduction alters how load is distributed across tissues. The spine may remain in a fixed angle, while the arms perform fine motor tasks. The neck may tilt forward consistently to view a screen. Over time, specific muscle groups remain shortened while others remain lengthened. The balance that once emerged naturally from environmental unpredictability becomes skewed. Research in occupational health has identified associations between repetitive work and musculoskeletal pain, particularly in the neck, shoulders, and wrists. These findings do not imply that all repetitive work causes chronic pain, but they highlight the role of sustained narrow demand. The nervous system, sensitive to tissue stress, responds when signals persist. If repetition continues without adequate recovery or variation, sensitivity may increase. There is also a psychological component. Repetitive tasks performed under time pressure can combine mechanical strain with stress. As previously discussed, stress influences pain perception. The convergence of repetitive physical demand and cognitive pressure amplifies the experience. In ancestral life, physical exertion was often directly tied to immediate survival goals and social cooperation. Modern repetitive labor may feel disconnected from tangible outcomes, altering emotional context. Chronic pain within modern work environments reflects this complex interaction. The human body evolved for movement that was varied, purposeful, and embedded in natural cycles. When work becomes narrow in motion and prolonged in duration, tissues experience a pattern for which they were not specifically shaped. The protective pain system responds to this sustained input. Over time, the response may become persistent, even if no single catastrophic injury has occurred. Repetition alone does not fully explain the burden of modern work on the body. Duration matters just as much as movement pattern. In many contemporary occupations, individuals remain in a work posture for hours at a time with few natural interruptions. The human organism evolved within daily cycles shaped by daylight, hunger, weather, and terrain. Tasks were completed in segments, often interrupted by the need to move to a new location, respond to environmental cues, or rest in response to fatigue. These interruptions created natural pauses in mechanical load. In contrast, modern schedules often prioritize continuity. A person may sit at a desk for several hours before standing. A factory worker may repeat a motion continuously until a scheduled break. Even when breaks occur, they may be brief and structured rather than responsive to bodily cues. Biological tissues rely on cycles of loading and unloading to maintain resilience. Intervertebral discs, for example, depend on movement to facilitate fluid exchange. Tendons require periods of rest to repair microdamage created by repetitive strain. When work is organized in long, uninterrupted blocks, these recovery cycles may be delayed. Over time, the accumulation of minor stress can influence tissue sensitivity. From an evolutionary perspective, the concept of an 8-hour continuous workday is recent. Early humans likely experienced bursts of intense activity followed by intervals of lower demand. The body's regulatory systems evolved within that rhythm. Hormonal patterns, energy expenditure, and muscular fatigue were tied to environmental cues rather than artificial clocks. Modern time structures, guided by economic efficiency, can override natural fatigue signals. Individuals may continue working despite early signs of discomfort. The pain system, designed to protect against overuse, sends signals. If those signals are repeatedly ignored due to social or professional expectations, neural sensitivity may increase. The body learns that strain persists without relief. Another dimension involves spatial restriction. Many workplaces confine movement to small areas. In ancestral environments, movement across landscapes required variation in stride, balance, and load. Modern confined spaces limit stride length and range of motion. Even standing work may occur on flat, hard surfaces without opportunity for significant variation. Hard flooring alters shock absorption compared to natural terrain. The cumulative effect over years may influence joints in the lower limbs and spine. Occupational health research has linked prolonged standing on rigid surfaces to increased reports of leg and back discomfort. This reflects not dramatic injury, but sustained mechanical demand in a limited spatial context. Cognitive demands also intersect with physical duration. When attention is absorbed by complex tasks, awareness of posture decreases. The body may remain in suboptimal alignment for extended periods without conscious adjustment. In natural settings, environmental cues often prompted spontaneous posture changes. Shifting light, sounds, or terrain encouraged movement. In controlled indoor environments, sensory cues are reduced. The nervous system receives fewer prompts to adjust. Chronic pain within modern work patterns therefore reflects both repetition and prolonged exposure. The body evolved to respond to variable, interrupted effort. When effort becomes narrow and extended without sufficient variation, tissues adapt to strain while the pain system remains alert. Over time, this sustained dialogue between tissue and nerve may shift from temporary warning to persistent experience. There is also a subtle shift in meaning that modern work introduces. In ancestral life, physical effort was closely tied to immediate outcomes. Gathering food meant eating. Building shelter meant protection from cold and rain. Carrying water meant survival for the group. The feedback loop between effort and result was direct and visible. Physical strain, though real, was embedded in purpose that was tangible and shared. The nervous system processed effort within a context of clear reward and social cooperation. In modern occupations, especially those dominated by abstract or digital tasks, the connection between physical posture and outcome can feel distant. A person may spend hours seated at a screen, performing cognitive labor that produces results not immediately visible in the physical world. The body remains static while the mind works intensely. This separation between mental effort and physical posture is historically recent. The human organism evolved under conditions where cognitive and physical demands were closely linked. Tracking animals required both planning and movement. Crafting tools required both concentration and varied hand use. When the two are separated, posture can become incidental rather than integral. The brain's attention is directed outward toward information rather than inward toward bodily signals. As a result, subtle signs of strain may go unnoticed for extended periods. Over months and years, this inattention can allow repetitive stress to accumulate. There is also the role of control and autonomy. Research in occupational psychology suggests that perceived lack of control at work can increase stress levels. Stress, as discussed earlier, interacts with pain processing pathways. When physical repetition occurs under time pressure or limited autonomy, the nervous system may remain in a state of heightened vigilance. Muscles may maintain low-level tension throughout the day. This tension increases mechanical load even in the absence of heavy lifting. The pain that arises is therefore not only mechanical but contextual. From an evolutionary perspective, Social hierarchies existed in ancestral groups, yet daily tasks were often performed within small communities where roles were flexible and immediate feedback was available. Modern work structures can be more rigid and less directly connected to survival needs. The body's ancient stress response systems remain active within these new structures. When combined with narrow physical movement and prolonged duration, the result can be persistent discomfort. Another aspect is commuting. In many modern societies, individuals spend significant time traveling to and from work in seated positions. This extends the duration of static posture beyond formal working hours. The daily cycle may include long stretches of immobility punctuated by brief episodes of movement. The cumulative effect over decades shapes musculoskeletal adaptation. Chronic pain associated with modern work cannot be explained by a single factor. It reflects repetition, duration, psychological context, and the separation of mental and physical engagement. The body evolved for integrated activity in variable environments. When work becomes prolonged, spatially confined, and cognitively dominant while physically narrow, the ancient protective system of pain continues to monitor strain. Over time, that monitoring may shift from temporary warning to persistent presence. Another transformation in modern life concerns space itself. For most of human history, daily life unfolded outdoors. Early humans moved across landscapes that were open, irregular, and constantly changing. Vision extended toward distant horizons. Sound traveled differently in open air. The body adjusted posture not only in response to task, but in response to terrain, weather, and shifting light. Movement was three-dimensional. Climbing, crouching, stepping over obstacles, and adjusting to slope required continuous recalibration of balance. The nervous system evolved within that spacious variability. Modern life often takes place indoors. Walls define boundaries. Ceilings limit vertical space. Floors are flat and predictable. Even large buildings contain corridors that channel movement in straight lines. While indoor spaces provide safety and comfort, they reduce environmental complexity. The body encounters fewer unpredictable surfaces and fewer reasons to change direction or posture spontaneously. The reduction in environmental stimulus influences both physical and sensory systems. Consider how the eyes function. In open landscapes, the gaze frequently shifts between near and far distances. This constant adjustment engages muscles of the eyes and neck. Indoors, especially when working at screens, focus remains at a fixed distance for prolonged periods. The neck may tilt slightly forward while the eyes remain locked on a narrow field. Over time, this sustained position can contribute to tension in cervical muscles. The discomfort that develops is not the result of one dramatic movement, but of prolonged stillness in limited visual and spatial context. The feet and ankles also experience different input. Natural terrain stimulates proprioception, the sense of body position in space, through irregular pressure patterns. Flat indoor surfaces provide uniform feedback. Reduced variability may decrease subtle muscular engagement that once supported joint stability. The body adapts to the environment it inhabits most frequently. When that environment is architecturally simplified, muscular and neural engagement may simplify as well. From an evolutionary perspective, extended time spent indoors is recent. Human physiology developed under open sky and fluctuating environmental cues. Sunlight regulated circadian rhythms. Wind, temperature shifts, and terrain changes prompted continuous micromovements. Modern buildings buffer these stimuli. Artificial lighting extends waking hours. Climate control stabilizes temperature. The sensory landscape becomes constant. While this stability reduces acute hardship, it also narrows the range of physical responses required each day. Chronic pain can arise within this narrowed spatial context. The musculoskeletal system depends on variety to maintain resilience. When space restricts movement patterns and visual focus remains fixed, specific regions of the body bear sustained load. The neck, lower back, and shoulders often reflect this pattern. Over years, reduced environmental variation interacts with repetition and duration to shape tissue adaptation. The human body evolved to navigate complex terrain and shifting sensory input. When daily life occurs primarily within enclosed, predictable spaces, the ancient dialogue between body and landscape changes. The pain system continues to monitor strain within this altered setting, responding to imbalances that accumulate quietly within walls that were designed for comfort rather than movement diversity. Time inside modern spaces follows a rhythm very different from that of the open world in which humans evolved. In ancestral environments, daylight marked the beginning and end of most activity. Dawn brought movement. Dusk brought gradual stillness. The body's internal clock, guided by exposure to natural light, synchronized sleep, hormone release, and tissue repair with the rising and setting of the sun. Darkness signaled restoration. Modern indoor life disrupts this rhythm in subtle ways. Artificial lighting extends activity well beyond sunset. Screens emit light late into the evening. Work and social communication continue without regard to natural cycles. The circadian system, which coordinates sleep and many physiological processes, becomes less tightly aligned with environmental cues. Research consistently shows that disrupted sleep increases pain sensitivity. Even short-term sleep restriction can lower pain thresholds in experimental settings. Over longer periods, irregular sleep patterns can influence inflammatory processes and neural regulation. In ancestral settings, while sleep might have been interrupted by environmental risk, it was still anchored to natural light patterns. Physical fatigue from daily movement likely promoted deeper rest. Modern fatigue often arises from cognitive strain rather than full-body exertion. The body may feel tired while certain muscle groups remain underused. Sleep may be shortened or fragmented by late-night stimulation or stress. The result is incomplete recovery for tissues already exposed to repetitive load. Spatial confinement also influences breathing patterns. In open environments, walking and physical labor naturally encourage deeper breathing and varied posture. Indoors, particularly during seated work, breathing may become shallow. Shallow breathing can increase tension in accessory muscles of the neck and shoulders. Over time, these muscles may remain partially activated, contributing to persistent tightness. This connection between breathing, posture, and pain is not new. It reflects how integrated systems respond to environment. Another subtle factor involves sensory monotony. The brain evolved to process a rich stream of environmental information, changing sounds, shifting light, varied terrain. Indoors, sensory input can become repetitive and limited. The nervous system may compensate by focusing more intensely on internal sensations. When external stimuli are reduced, awareness of bodily discomfort can become more pronounced. This does not create pain artificially. It can amplify perception of signals that might otherwise fade into a broader sensory field. From an evolutionary perspective, the human organism was calibrated to balance internal and external awareness within dynamic settings. Modern enclosed spaces tilt that balance inward for extended periods. The body remains in relatively fixed positions while the mind engages with digital or abstract tasks. The natural cues that once prompted spontaneous movement, cool wind, uneven ground, distant sound, are absent. Without these cues, posture changes must be intentional rather than automatic. Chronic pain can emerge within this temporal and spatial structure. The alignment of movement, rest, light, and sensory input that characterized ancestral life has been reshaped. The ancient pain system still monitors tissue stress and internal balance. When recovery cycles are shortened and environmental variability is reduced, signals that once resolved overnight may persist. The difference lies not in the design of the body, but in the rhythm of the space and time it now inhabits. There is one more dimension of modern space that is easy to overlook because it feels normal. It is the reduction of distance. For most of human history, distance shaped the body. Water might be a walk away, food sources required travel. Social contact meant moving toward others across open land. Distance created natural intervals of low-intensity activity throughout the day. Even short trips required standing, stepping, adjusting to terrain. The body expected this background movement. Modern design compresses distance. A person may wake, walk a few steps to the kitchen, sit in a vehicle, sit at a desk, return home, and sit again. Essential tasks are completed within small physical radii. Technology reduces the need to travel even short distances. Groceries arrive at the door. Messages travel instantly. While these changes improve efficiency and safety, They quietly remove countless minor movements that once maintained baseline conditioning. The body evolved under conditions where low-level activity was continuous. Walking several thousand steps per day was not exercise, it was survival. Muscles, tendons, and joints adapted to this constant engagement. When daily step count drops significantly over years, conditioning shifts downward. The pain system does not measure convenience. It measures tissue stress relative to capacity. If capacity declines because baseline movement decreases, even modest strain can exceed tolerance. This is one reason why seemingly small tasks can trigger disproportionate discomfort in deconditioned bodies. Spatial compression also influences posture transition. In ancestral settings, movement between tasks required standing from squatting, stepping over obstacles, turning frequently. These transitions trained coordination and joint mobility. Modern interiors often allow direct transitions between seated positions with minimal variation. Chairs, cars, and sofas share similar hip and knee angles. The repetition of these limited postures across multiple environments reinforces a narrow mechanical pattern. Over time, joints become accustomed to restricted ranges. When a broader range is suddenly required bending deeply, lifting from the floor the unfamiliar angle may provoke strain. From an evolutionary viewpoint, the human organism is remarkably adaptable, but adaptation requires stimulus. When distance shrinks and effort is minimized, the stimulus for maintaining broad capacity weakens. Chronic pain in compressed modern spaces reflects this gradual narrowing. The ancient body expected daily rehearsal across varied distances and terrains. It now functions in environments that prioritize efficiency over variability. The pain system, designed to guard against overload, responds when reduced conditioning meets sudden demand. What once would have been routine movement becomes perceived as threat. The transformation of space, its enclosure, its stability, its shortened distances, interacts with time, work, and comfort to reshape how strain accumulates. Chronic pain is not the product of a single design flaw. It emerges from layers of change in how humans inhabit space and move through it. There is a final layer that binds together many of the changes we have explored. It is not found in muscles or joints alone, but in how humans interpret and respond to discomfort. For most of evolutionary history, pain was closely tied to immediate survival. A sharp sensation meant injury. The response was to stop, protect, and recover if possible. Once healing occurred, daily life resumed within the same environmental rhythm that shaped the body. The meaning of pain was direct. In modern life, pain often lacks that clarity. A person may wake with lower back discomfort without recalling a specific injury. Neck stiffness may appear after an ordinary workday. The absence of a clear cause can create uncertainty. The brain, shaped to interpret ambiguous signals cautiously, may treat uncertainty itself as threat. This can heighten vigilance and amplify perception. Research in pain science shows that fear and anticipation can increase muscle tension and neural sensitivity. When movement is associated with expected pain, the body may brace in advance. Bracing increases load on certain tissues, which can reinforce discomfort. Over time, a cycle can develop in which fear of pain alters movement patterns, leading to further strain. This process is not conscious exaggeration. It reflects protective strategies embedded deeply in neural circuits. In ancestral contexts, visible injury and environmental cues often clarified when caution was necessary. Modern chronic pain frequently arises without visible trauma. Imaging may show minor age-related changes that are common even in individuals without symptoms. This ambiguity challenges interpretation. The brain searches for meaning. Cultural narratives about aging, injury, and fragility influence that search. If pain is interpreted as evidence of irreversible damage, fear may increase. Fear alters behavior. Reduced movement follows, and deconditioning accelerates. The protective system remains active, but its calibration shifts. There is also the role of medicalization. The development of advanced diagnostic tools has transformed healthcare. Imaging can reveal structural variations that were once invisible. While this knowledge improves treatment of serious conditions, it can also highlight minor findings that may not correlate directly with pain. When individuals focus on structural explanations alone, they may overlook the interplay between movement patterns, stress, and neural sensitivity. The body becomes viewed as damaged rather than adaptable. From an evolutionary perspective, adaptability was central to survival. Early humans adjusted to changing environments through movement and cooperation. Chronic pain in modern life often reflects diminished confidence in that adaptability. The pain system continues to function as it always has, prioritizing caution when uncertainty arises. Yet the environment in which uncertainty occurs has changed. The human organism evolved to integrate physical sensation, emotional context, and social meaning within small, stable groups. Today, information about pain spreads rapidly through media and digital communication, shaping expectations before personal experience even occurs. This cultural layer interacts with ancient biology. Chronic pain becomes not only a physical phenomenon but a narrative one. The challenge lies in recognizing that the body's protective responses are rooted in evolutionary logic, even when the modern context obscures their original purpose. Belief has a measurable influence on physiology. The brain does not only receive pain signals, it predicts them. In neuroscience, there is growing recognition that perception arises from a combination of incoming sensory data and prior expectation. The brain generates models of what is likely to happen and compares real-time input to those models. When prediction and sensation align, experience feels stable. When there is mismatch or uncertainty, attention increases. This predictive function evolved because it improves survival. Anticipating danger allows preparation before injury occurs. In ancestral environments, predictions were shaped by repeated exposure to similar landscapes and tasks. A steep slope required caution. A sharp stone suggested potential harm. Experience built accurate expectations. In modern contexts, predictions about pain can be shaped by information rather than direct physical cues. Media messages, medical terminology, and stories from others influence how sensations are interpreted. If an individual hears repeatedly that a certain posture inevitably damages the spine, mild discomfort in that posture may trigger heightened alarm. The brain's prediction of harm increases vigilance, amplifying the sensation. This does not mean the pain is imagined. It means the predictive system is operating according to learned information. Studies on placebo and nocebo effects demonstrate how expectation alters physiological response. Positive expectation can reduce pain perception, while negative expectation can intensify it. These effects involve measurable changes in brain activity and neurotransmitter release. They illustrate that pain is not a simple readout of tissue damage. It is an interpretation shaped by belief and context. In ancestral life, belief systems also existed, yet they were grounded in immediate shared experience. Pain after a fall was understood as injury from that fall. Healing followed visible recovery. Modern diagnostic categories introduce abstract explanations: disc degeneration, joint wear, structural imbalance that may or may not correlate directly with symptoms. When structural language is interpreted as permanent damage, fear can increase. Fear influences muscle tension and avoidance behavior. Avoidance reduces movement variability. Reduced variability can contribute to deconditioning. The cycle reinforces itself. From an evolutionary standpoint, the brain's sensitivity to social information is adaptive. Early humans depended on shared knowledge for survival. Warnings about dangerous locations or foods were crucial. Today, warnings about posture or structural fragility spread quickly and widely. The nervous system processes these warnings as it would any survival-relevant information. Chronic pain may therefore reflect an interaction between biological sensitivity and cultural messaging. The protective bias that once kept our ancestors alive continues to function, but it now integrates a far broader stream of information. Recognizing this does not diminish the reality of pain. Instead, it situates pain within the broader framework of human cognition shaped by evolutionary history. The same brain that learned to avoid predators now learns to anticipate discomfort based on language and belief. In some cases, that anticipation can sustain the experience even when tissues are capable of recovery. When belief and expectation interact with biology, they do not operate in isolation. They become embedded in daily behavior. A person who interprets back pain as evidence of fragility may begin to move cautiously. bending becomes hesitant, lifting is avoided. Even ordinary activities are approached with guarded posture. This protective guarding increases muscular tension. Increased tension raises mechanical load on certain joints. Over time, the body adapts to this guarded pattern. Muscles shorten, coordination shifts, and variability decreases further. The pain system, already sensitive, continues to detect strain within this narrowed range of motion. What began as a protective response can gradually reshape movement in ways that sustain discomfort. From an evolutionary perspective, guarding behavior is logical. If a limb is injured, limiting its movement reduces risk of further damage. In ancestral settings, visible injury provided clear cues for when guarding was necessary and when it could end. Once tissue healed, full movement typically resumed because survival tasks required it. In modern chronic pain, the absence of visible injury complicates this cycle. Guarding may continue long after tissue has recovered because the perception of threat persists. The nervous system does not easily distinguish between physical and symbolic threat. If movement has been repeatedly associated with discomfort, the brain may anticipate harm even when structural integrity is intact. Cultural narratives about aging and degeneration reinforce this anticipation. Phrases such as wear and tear suggest irreversible decline. While tissues do change with age, many structural findings on imaging are also present in people without pain. The gap between structural variation and subjective experience highlights the role of interpretation. When pain is framed as unavoidable damage, individuals may disengage from movement that could strengthen tissues and recalibrate sensitivity. Social context further shapes this process. In communities where chronic pain is common, shared stories can normalize certain expectations about limitation. At the same time, communities that emphasize gradual activity and resilience may foster different responses. The brain evolved to integrate social information into survival strategies. Observing others' experiences influences one's own predictions. In ancestral groups, this learning increased chances of avoiding environmental danger. In modern contexts, it can influence how pain is anticipated and managed. None of this suggests that chronic pain is simply a matter of belief. Tissue strain, neural adaptation, stress, and aging remain central factors, yet belief interacts with each of these. The protective system of pain evolved to be cautious. It weighs uncertainty heavily. When uncertainty is interpreted as fragility, caution can become chronic. Over time, movement patterns narrow, muscular support decreases, and sensitivity remains high. The body that once adapted fluidly to varied terrain now adapts to guarded stillness. Chronic pain emerges not from a single flaw, but from layered adaptations, biological, psychological, and social, interacting within environments far removed from those that shaped our species. When we gather together the threads of environment, biology, lifespan, work, space, and belief, a quiet pattern emerges. Chronic pain in modern life does not appear as a sudden anomaly. It unfolds as a layered consequence of rapid cultural change interacting with slow biological evolution. The human body was shaped across hundreds of thousands of years within landscapes that demanded movement, variability, and intermittent stress. The nervous system evolved to prioritize protection over comfort, sensitivity over indifference. Muscles acted as guardians, joints were supported by dynamic engagement, and pain signaled clear and immediate threat. Modern civilization has transformed nearly every one of those conditions within a very short span of time. Movement has narrowed, distance has shrunk, comfort has increased, lifespan has extended, work has become repetitive and often sedentary. Light continues long after sunset. Information shapes expectation before sensation even occurs. None of these changes are inherently harmful. Many represent extraordinary progress. Yet together they create a mismatch between ancient biological design and contemporary structure. Chronic pain can be understood as one expression of that mismatch. It reflects a body still operating according to protective principles that once ensured survival in unpredictable environments. The pain system does not know about offices, screens, or climate control. It monitors tissue stress and uncertainty. When mechanical load is repetitive, recovery is incomplete, sleep is shortened, and fear reinforces guarding. The system remains active. This persistence is not evidence of weakness or defect. It is evidence of adaptation functioning within unfamiliar conditions. From an evolutionary perspective, the body expects variation. It expects cycles of effort and rest aligned with natural rhythms. It expects muscles to engage regularly in diverse tasks. It expects social connection to buffer stress. When these expectations are not met consistently, protective mechanisms may intensify. Chronic pain, then, becomes less a mysterious malfunction and more a signal that the environment surrounding the body has shifted faster than biology can recalibrate. The final question is not how to silence pain instantly, but how to understand its logic. If pain evolved to guard survival, what does it guard in a world where threats are less visible but often more prolonged? Perhaps it guards against overload in deconditioned tissues. Perhaps it guards against uncertainty amplified by stress and belief. Perhaps it reflects the tension between ancient priorities and modern structure. Recognizing this does not eliminate discomfort, but it reframes it. The human body remains remarkably adaptable. Throughout history, it has adjusted to climate, diet, and migration. The same capacity for adaptation exists today. Chronic pain may be an invitation to reconsider how movement, rest, light, work, and expectation align with the evolutionary roots of our species. If the body still speaks in the language of protection shaped long ago, what might change if we listen to that language with patience rather than fear? If chronic pain reflects a mismatch between ancient biology and modern structure, then the response is not to fight the body, but to understand its expectations. The human organism was shaped to adapt gradually to consistent input. Muscles strengthen when used progressively. Tendons remodel in response to repeated but tolerable load. Neural pathways recalibrate when safe movement is repeated without catastrophic outcome. Adaptation requires time and repetition within a context of perceived safety. In ancestral environments, this process occurred naturally. Daily survival tasks provided graded exposure to physical challenge. A young person learned to carry light loads before heavier ones. Walking distances increased gradually with age and responsibility. The body adapted because the environment demanded steady, varied engagement rather than abrupt extremes. Modern life often alternates between prolonged inactivity and sudden effort. Hours of sitting may be followed by a weekend of intense exercise. Weeks of low movement may precede an unexpected heavy lift. This pattern places tissues in a difficult position. Conditioning decreases during inactivity, then load increases abruptly. The pain system, tuned to detect overload, responds quickly. If discomfort leads to avoidance rather than gradual re-engagement, deconditioning continues. The cycle reinforces itself. Understanding this pattern shifts focus from damage to capacity. Capacity reflects what tissues and neural circuits are prepared to handle at a given moment. Capacity can expand with consistent, manageable exposure. Neuroscience research indicates that repeated, non-threatening movement can reduce central sensitization over time. When the brain receives evidence that movement is safe, predictive alarm decreases. This does not mean pushing through severe pain without guidance. It means recognizing that graded activity aligns with how adaptation evolved. Sleep and stress management also fit within this framework. The body evolved to repair tissues during aligned circadian cycles. Prioritizing consistent sleep supports inflammatory regulation and neural recovery. Reducing chronic stress lowers baseline vigilance within the nervous system. Social connection, long central to human survival, buffers stress responses and influences pain perception. These elements are not modern inventions. They are echoes of the environment in which our biology formed. There is also value in restoring variability to daily life. Walking on different surfaces, changing posture regularly, integrating small bouts of movement throughout the day all reintroduce the diversity that shaped our musculoskeletal and neural systems. The goal is not to recreate prehistoric conditions, but to reintroduce principles consistent with them: variation, gradual load, rhythm, and recovery. From an evolutionary perspective, the body is not fragile by default. It is responsive. Chronic pain can signal that responsiveness has been overwhelmed or miscalibrated by rapid environmental change. By re-establishing conditions that support gradual adaptation, individuals may help recalibrate the protective system rather than suppress it. The process is not immediate, because biological change is rarely immediate. Yet the same adaptability that allowed humans to survive shifting climates and migrations remains present. The question becomes how modern environments can be shaped to align more closely with those enduring biological expectations. When we step back and look at the long arc of human history, chronic pain begins to appear less as a mysterious failure and more as a quiet message carried forward from deep time. The body that aches in a modern chair is the same body that once crossed open plains. The spine that stiffens after hours indoors is descended from spines that balance beneath open sky. The nervous system that amplifies discomfort evolved to keep fragile humans alive in landscapes filled with risk. It is not broken, it is cautious, it is attentive, it is doing what it was shaped to do. The difficulty is not that pain exists. The difficulty is that the world surrounding the body has changed faster than the body itself. Movement has narrowed. Light has shifted. Distance has collapsed. Work has become repetitive and abstract. Lifespan has extended beyond what was once common. Belief and information now shape expectation before sensation even arises. Each of these layers interacts with ancient protective systems that were never designed for prolonged stillness, constant cognitive load, or decades of subtle mechanical strain. Chronic pain, then, can be understood as the echo of adaptation in a world that no longer matches its original rhythm. It is a reminder that the human organism expects variability, gradual challenge, and cycles of recovery. It expects social connection and alignment with natural light. It expects muscles to engage regularly and tissues to be asked to adapt slowly over time. When these expectations are unmet, the protective system speaks more loudly. The educational message within this reflection is not that modern life must be abandoned, nor that comfort is an enemy. It is that understanding our evolutionary roots offers clarity. When pain is viewed solely as damage, fear grows. When it is viewed as communication shaped by history, curiosity can replace fear. Curiosity opens space for gradual movement, consistent sleep, balanced stress, and renewed variability. The body remains capable of adaptation at every age. Neural pathways can recalibrate. Muscles can strengthen. Sensitivity can soften when safety is repeatedly demonstrated. None of this is instantaneous, because evolution itself was never instantaneous. It unfolded slowly across generations. In the same way, restoration unfolds through steady alignment with biological principles. Chronic pain in modern life invites a question rather than a conclusion. If our bodies still carry the logic of ancient survival, how might we shape our daily rhythms, our movement, our rest, our expectations, so that this ancient logic feels at home again in the world we have built?